Hi, I'm Madeline Height. I'm a member of McMurray Métis 1935, and I'm also their digital media coordinator.
Maddy and Melanie in Sikasan, Ochiweo, Esqueo, McMurray Métis, Local 1935. So what I tried to say is, hi, Melanie is my name. I am a proud Métis woman and a member of McMurray Métis, Local 1935. And I'm born and raised here in Fort McMurray. So it's really interesting growing up here in Fort McMurray and being a member of McMurray Métis because we get the opportunity to connect with our Métis culture, which we're so fortunate because we know that that was a thing that was denied to many Indigenous people, and now we're kind of all on this journey towards reconciliation and reconnection to our culture.
I know personally myself, I didn't actually know I was Métis until I was like 13 or 14 years old, and it was when my principal actually came and requested 3 of us in our class to do a presentation on what it was like to be Indigenous, and I was like, you're asking the wrong person. I'm blonde hair, blue eyes, white. As far as I knew, I was English, Scottish, Swedish, and then I went home and asked my mom, and she says like, yep, you're Métis, all right. From there on, I just kind of did a deep dive into what it meant being Métis, what that culture was. It was especially when I came on with McMurray Métis back in 2019 as a summer student, I did a real deep dive into my culture, McMurray's culture, and all of that. So being able to work with Melanie and just seeing all the different kinds of people that are Métis, we don't look all alike.
There's one analogy that I like to use too. There's green tea, there's red rose tea, but the best tea is Métis, and everyone takes their tea a little bit different. So we all look a little bit different, and that's totally okay. And you know, if you look at the Métis flag for an example, you know, it's the joining of the two cultures. On one side you have your First Nations culture, and the other side you have your European culture, and it's about the merging of the two. I come from a really large Métis Indigenous family. My grandmother had 12 siblings. We all lived in Lac-La-Biche, Fort McMurray area. So I was lucky when I was growing up. I went to school with a lot of my first cousins, and my grandmother always would walk us to school, and she was just making sure that we were nice and protected and safe when we were in school.
Doing a deep dive into my own family line, I found out that my great grandpa, Patrice, was the brother of Marguerite de Bellemare, who some people might know as Louis Leo's wife. And I would never have known that unless I went to my grandma and asked her what it was like growing up. Something that I can say is, if you're a white passing Métis person or a white passing Indigenous person, don't hide. You can have a claim to your culture as much as the other person. Whether you want to speak Cree, you can learn Cree. If that's not your cup of tea, then learn beading if you like that. There is so much culture underneath the Métis umbrella that you can really do anything you want.
If you are Métis and you have that ancestry, like, come and learn. It's never too late to learn, and it's so important to reconnect with our culture. You know, our ancestors fought so hard to preserve our rights, and I'm so thankful for my family and ancestors doing all of the work that they can do to uphold our Indigenous rights. And I think the Métis Nations are doing really phenomenal things in the government. Like 2016 was such a huge monument when the Daniels case was passed, and under Section C35, Métis people were recognized as one of the Indigenous peoples of Canada. There's so many different cases what makes us Métis people, but at the end of the day we are still Indigenous, and that is important to know. And as well as we still have European roots, and we honor that as well. My Maddy's grandparents, those were kind of like the generation that was hidden because of things like the 60s scoop and residential schools and all of that was going on. And then of course you have the missing and murdered, exploited Indigenous people epidemic going on. So they were really hidden, and they couldn't practice their culture in a safe way, even though that culture is really what gave them their uplifted spirits. And then as a result of that, our parents were the hidden generation. So we had like the lost generation, the hidden generation, and now the found generation with me and Maddy. And what I can hope for my nieces and nephew, and maybe one day my future children, that generation will be the proud generation, and they will never have to hide their culture or question or defend, and people will just honor them as Métis Indigenous people.